you find dealing with people who are, at the pinnacle of their industry, and quite senior, intimidating, or do you think that there's some, you don't feel intimidated by that at all?
It's a very good question, because when you walk into a room with someone who you've read about for most of your life, it's very easy to go, shit, I'm just going to sit here and say nothing because this guy knows everything, they know it all. And the challenge is obviously that you've got to do the deal, and sometimes you've got to argue back, and sometimes you got to tell this same guy who you've read about and whose career you know backwards, and who people write books and articles about, look, I respect you, but you're wrong. Or, I respect you, but we're not signing this particular deal. And it definitely was a challenge starting off. And I still do hide my age from people. And in the early days, I remember Activision coming over on a due diligence visit shortly before the acquisition, and we were all out for dinner. And it was my birthday. I don't make a big deal about my birthday. And it happened to be my birthday, and not many people knew it. And it was most of us from the company out. And there was a friend of mine who happened to drop by. It was just kind of a social thing, and she ended up sitting beside one of the guys doing due diligence from Activision, And anyway, one thing led to another, and there was a conversation about, what was going on? Oh, it's Dylan's birthday, And the guy goes, oh, what age is he, And she goes, oh, he's 26, and his head nearly explodes, because they all assume I was sort of in my mid-30s at that point. And that part has been a huge challenge. When you're walking into someone and they all assume you're older, always, right? And you have to sort of maintain that image. And that's been very difficult. I think you get to a certain point, because the problem is when people realize what age you actually are, no matter what you've done, they really tend to downplay it, and they go, hey, you know what, you're just young, you don't know what you're talking about, You get to a certain point where I guess I've been fortunate enough to have a track record and work with some really, really incredible people. And I can now walk into a meeting and people will go, okay, you seem to know what you're doing here. And that's quite refreshing. But it is still a challenge, because you'll still, particularly when you're dealing with older media, brands that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, amazing brands, global brands, and you've got guys who've been working at that company for the same length of time, and you're trying to explain to them some particular concept, or this is how this piece of technology is going to work or change your business. And you are still met with immense skepticism just because of your age, And that's a challenge, and I think probably will be for a while yet.
Do you think being Irish helps? I mean, because I always wonder about Irish people who have to go into the valley and sell their companies, sell their wares, and the thing is that is a challenge for a lot of Irish companies now. Do you think that getting them to, people who are Irish who have to go and make a name for themselves in the world, do you think being Irish helps, or do you think it's a disadvantage?
It's a huge asset. I mean, being Irish is one of the biggest business assets that you can have. It's something that just grows on me over time. And until I started doing business outside of the country, I absolutely didn't appreciate that. And suddenly, not suddenly, but as soon as I started meeting people in the States, I suddenly began to have a small appreciation of what this Irish thing is. And you will, no matter what it is you're trying to do or sell or do a deal on, or what you're representing, you're going to be known firstly when people meet you as the Irish guy, which sounds almost a little bit ridiculous, but it's great, because you've made an impact on them just by walking in the door and opening your mouth, and they remember you, right? And in terms of getting a deal done, if you're going in and there's 50 other guys who are pitching something or a deal, they're going to remember you because you're Irish, and that's a huge starting point. You're way ahead of all the other guys, So we don't make enough of that, I think, and I think too many people discover it by chance. But that Irishness, that Irish identity, works everywhere in the world. It is something that I still don't appreciate enough, I think. And I mean, when we used to go to conferences through all our various companies, we were always initially known in the early days, before people even knew what we did, as, hey, it's the crazy Irish guys, you know. And it is so effective because we're a social nation, we're able to talk, and when you combine that identity that people understand and like, because it's a very benevolent identity, with the fact that naturally we can go in and be a little bit more narrative in terms of how we do deals, that's a huge force. And I mean, on a corporate level, I think we're genuinely one of the best in the world in terms of being able to go in and get deal conversations going because of those things, you know.
Because that's one of the contradictions I find when I've ever travelled around anywhere in the world and I've seen Irish people in action, in whether it's in Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress or somewhere in Silicon Valley or Singapore. They own the room, but on the ground I just don't think we have that same realisation or confidence sometimes. In terms of building Ireland's digital media industry, because we, on one hand, have all the big companies are here in terms of Google, Zynga, Facebook, they're all here. We want to emulate that and have our own success stories, and I think you with Jolt are on the way to doing that, but getting more of that kind of thing, I mean, can we continue being a country where our biggest digital export is going to be U2, or are we going to have bigger success stories? I mean, do you think it's possible?
I think absolutely. I think taking a step back kind of to the earlier part of your question, one of the challenges we have as a nation is that we're almost ashamed to talk about what we've done well. We're not naturally ebullient like the Americans are. We don't go out and say, hey, you know what, we're great. We've done this and this and this. Look at us because we're awesome. And we have some of the biggest digital media companies in the world here, and we're not going out and shouting about it. Because I think on some level we have this fear of being perceived as successful, you know, on some kind of national subconscious level. And we need to get over that.
Absolutely.
Because no one else is going to come and tell us that we're great because they don't know enough about it. You know, you talk to the big American companies who are here, the likes of Facebook and Google and Zynga, and they'll say, you know what, it's a great place to do business. But we can't rely on them to go and tell other people, because for them it's like their competitive advantage. Go to Europe, sure, go to Germany, Poland, really easy to do business there, be fine. Culture is totally similar. We need to be going out and saying to the world, we are excellent at this. We do this better than anyone else, and here's the proof. Here are all these public companies. Here are all these high growth startup companies that are here. Here are literally companies that are the best in their field, and they've picked Ireland over all these other places to do business in this part of the world. And we're not doing that, and it feels sometimes as if we're just afraid to do it, you know, and we shouldn't be.